Hello again and welcome to Through the Bible. Today is episode 38, Leviticus 13 through 16. Leviticus 13 begins with a discussion of skin diseases. Keep in mind that during those days, the priests were also kind of the doctors. They saw these different diseases. They looked at these different diseases. There were certain prescriptions for them to be able to evaluate them, whatever the sickness might be, and there were ways to determine whether they were something that was infectious or something that was just common or whatever it might be. They protected the community from infectious diseases. So this was actually a good health thing. The contamination of clothing and their environment. Many of the health protocols we use today, very similar to those. Now we have better understanding now. We have more science than we did back then. But amazing that this long ago there was such a well thought out protocol for how to protect the community from disease. In some ways it may seem archaic, but it was very advanced for their time and still very largely helpful in protecting the community. In 14, we see the cleansing and the decontamination rituals that took place. Once there was healing declared, or once this thing was gone, then there was a reconnection to God, a reconnection to the community. Everybody saw it. People felt comfortable now welcoming that person back into the community. In chapter 15, we see the idea of bodily discharges, hand washing, again, discussions on contamination and cleansing, and that restoration to the community when everything was taken care of. So all of these things are great recognition of how advanced the Hebrew culture was so long ago. And then in chapter 16 is a discussion on the Day of Atonement, or what we now call Yom Kippur. It begins with the process of what Aaron needed to do, or the high priest needed to do, to be able to enter in to the Holy of Holies. And this, once again, this process spoke to the holiness of God, that you don't just treat it as common, you don't just walk in, you don't just not be prepared when you enter into the presence of God, but you recognize that sin is something that God detests, and you eradicate that from your life. You make the sacrifices, you do the things that you need to do to prepare for that. And then there was this idea of these two goats. And these two goats would be brought in, and lots would be cast, and that would, you can think of it like flipping a coin. But one goat was selected to be the sacrifice that would burn on the altar. The other goat would go into the wilderness, into the land where no one was. And before it went, the priest would lay his hands on the top of the head of that goat, and that goat would then carry the sins away from the camp. That was the idea. That was the symbolism that was being given, is that the goat would carry the sins away from the camp. We now call that the scapegoat. So if you've ever heard that expression, now you know where it comes from. It comes because that scapegoat took our sins and carried them away from the fellowship of who we are, away from ourselves, gave us the ability to live as pure even though we were sinful creatures. In the New Testament, we would see that Jesus would become our scapegoat, that he would carry our sins away from us, he would take them away from us, that he would become the atonement. He would actually become both the sacrificial lamb that would die, and he would become the sacrificial lamb that would carry it away. And so Jesus fulfilled all of that type, all of that prophetic symbolism right there in Leviticus chapter 16 that was discussed. So that covers us for today, Leviticus 13 through 16. I look forward to seeing you next time on Through the Bible.